students. Today we are going to discuss Margaret Atwood's novel Surfacing as a feminist novel. Surfacing has been largely viewed as a feminist text. It reveals Margaret Atwood's rejection of the view that man-woman relationship is based on power politics. It's like a relationship of a colonizer and a colonized, in which man tries to exploit women sexually as well as emotionally. Atwood focuses on the psychological dimensions of sexual politics, which can, as it does in the case of the protagonist, lead a woman to insanity. But in this case of victimization and exploitation of women by man, Atwood holds the women guilty too insofar as they show a fatalistic acceptance of sexual colonialism, thinking they are powerless and can do absolutely nothing to save themselves against this exploitation and victimization. The most important aspect of Atwood's feminism is that she makes a plea for a balanced, harmonious man woman relationship in which both of them play a complementary role instead of playing a winning or losing game. The protagonist articulates the crippling effects on women of a social system which enforces rigid gender definitions and roles. These socially engendered differences are the chief sources of women's operation and often lead to a pathological behavior in them at times. The protagonist narrates her early experiences of her earlier colonialism growing up in a masculine world. She vividly remembers how, when she was in school, I quote, the boys chased and captured the girls after school and tied them up in their own skipping ropes. Unquote. She also recalls her childish arguments with her brother, in which, again I quote, after a while I no longer fought back because I never won. Unquote. She grew up in a system in which it was worse for a girl to ask questions than for a boy. This has been her process of social conditioning, which Atwood believes is true of women everywhere. They are taught and made to feel that men are superior to them. They remain reconciled to their own inferiority for the rest of their lives. In the protagonist's world, women seek fulfillment as wives and mothers, and it is futile for them to seek a greater destiny than to accept their passivity. A commercial artist, the protagonist realizes that she could have been a great artist if she had not cared to listen to what her fake husband told her. And he used to tell her, I quote, there have never been any important woman artists. In David's view, it would suffice for housewives how to switch on the TV and switch off their heads. Protagonist's father's friend, Paul, is surprised at the protagonist's undertaking a search for her father, who has mysteriously vanished in the lake. And what he comments, he tells her, a man should be handling this. So, in a male dominated world, men resist women's attempts at being their equal, even though some of them profess, like David, I quote, I am all for the equality of women, unquote. But indeed, He warns his wife Anna. Again I quote, "None of the women slip," David said, his eyes lidding, "or you'll out on the street. I won't have one in the house." Unquote. That explains why Atwood's protagonist is scared of the magic word love. It is so imprecise, and for women, it is synonymous with lust. Marriage, in the case of the protagonist, on the other hand, does in no way improves a woman's position. In fact, it worsens it as she realizes from her own experience. So, in this novel, we see that man emerges as the colonizer and woman the colonized. She wants it very difficult to work it out because man want bloody everything. Marriage stifles for women all possibilities of autonomy of an independent existence. To Anna, it is like skiing, while to the uh, unnamed protagonist, marriage is like jumping off a cliff. The minds of both David and Anna are full of suspicions about each other, and Anna employs every trick in the book, in the novel, like appearing with makeup all the time and using her body as the weapon, the weapon to keep David, who says that he has been manipulated into marriage by her. They do not talk much anymore except with other people around. So, in this way, their relationship was a fake one. Then David is jealous and possessive of Anna, even though he himself makes advances to the protagonist when she is alone. The protagonist is pained to know that David and Anna hate each other, though that must be as absorbing as love. And she dreads marriage, especially its finality. Her fake husband was a middle aged, average, and second rate kind of a person, a very selfish person who had a wife and children, who already had wife and children. And that is why he wanted the protagonist to abort their child. And he was not even there when they were slaughtering the unborn child within her. He was celebrating the birthday of one of his children. Yet, the protagonist realizes, I quote, "For him, I could have been anyone, but for me, he was unique. The first. That's where I learned. I worshipped him. I kept scraps of his handwriting like saints' relics." Unquote. So here lies the split between the protagonist's feminine self and feminist self, which she wants to resolve through purgation, through rituals like fire and water. It is her feminist self that goads the protagonist to find a balanced, harmonious equation in the man woman relationship. She wishes Joe could mean something more to her than the conventional husband, different from her earlier fake husband, although she still wears the ring given to her by the later, as it's useful for landladies and has been an opener of doors for her. She cannot find the misery her abortion caused her. I couldn't accept it, that mutilation ruin I had made. So the abortion is another way for proving men's control over woman's body. This way, it has a devastating effect on the protagonist's psyche. The protagonist suffers from a very strong guilt complex because she is really not so innocent as far as the abortion is concerned. And she says that I could have said no, but I didn't, and that made me one of them too, a killer. She is full of contempt for the male lust. Marriage for the sake of convenience and convention makes no sense to the protagonist of Surfacing. Although she is grateful to Joe for having given her, I quote, the part of himself she needed. Here, Atwood seems to be questioning the existing sexual politics. Towards the end of the novel, the protagonist refuses to become a victim of this man woman equation. She has discovered her potential for an authentic and integrated self. Now, men can be dealt with. They can be watched and predicted and stopped without being copied. This is a great feminist awakening. The protagonist is the new woman, a rebel prepared to confront, to struggle and survive with dignity in a man's world. A woman must have faith in her own powers. Then alone can she achieve something. She returns sane, whole, and victorious. She has shown the way for a woman's struggle to face herself. And she is no longer a mouse or a bird. She needs a man to complete her, but on her own terms. The two opposite sexes are complementary, and what is required is a balanced, harmonious relationship and a healthy coexistence between the two. So, these are Margaret Atwood's views regarding man woman relationship in the novel Surfacing. That's all, students. Thank you.